Today on the episode, is AI actually good for security? The CIRCIA final rule and what it means for incident reporting, protecting yourself against a changing compliance landscape, and the cybersecurity M&A consolidation problem. This is Distilled Security Podcast.
Somewhere right now, someone is digging through folders trying to find the right version of an evidence file for the third time this week. Controls scattered across a dozen systems, owners who left the company months ago, due dates that already passed, and nobody noticed. It's how it's always been done, and somehow we just accept it. There is a modern, better way. Episky. Visit us at episky.com/DSP for a special offer.
If you're leading a company today, you're not short on ideas. You're buried under them. More tools, more frameworks, more initiatives that were supposed to help and somehow made everything harder. Minus Partners exists for leaders who don't need another thing added. Minus Partners helps leadership teams remove friction that's been normalized over time, so execution gets easier, not harder. Less noise, clear decisions, faster execution. Minus Partners. What you remove defines you.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Distilled Security Podcast. We're starting off we've done a number of topics on AI, basically used for hacking, AI dangers, all that stuff. But I thought maybe it'd be good if we actually ask the question, is it good for security, into that? So there's been a number of articles into there, and a couple of them from Anthropic. They have one in a pre-release model that they are dedicating for security discovery, into that. It's basically a static code analysis tool into that. I applied for the pre-release. I haven't got it yet. Hint, hint, if anybody's listening. But, with that, and I think we mentioned, was it last podcast, that Anthropic, when their new Opus model came out, it pointed and found like 500 0 days, on that was actually probably in between.
It was. We didn't talk about it.
We didn't talk about it. Okay.
All
right. But yeah, like with that and everything, so is AI really good for security? Do you guys have opinions? And the other thing that I'll interject because I'm talking here. One of the charts, did you see the chart I attached to the notes?
Yeah.
The Anthropic, on all the agents that are released out there, number one is like almost 50% is used for development.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody else is like single digits, including like cybersecurity was like 2.6%.
So I saw a really neat thing the other day around like who gets value from AI.
Yeah.
Like even just like general assistance, right? And a quote that was with the research basically said, AI is interesting because it can make hard things easy, but it makes easy things hard sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And so developers absolutely can shave a bunch of time off, right? But if you're a kind of ticket processor, typically your standard agents aren't shaving that much time off like general knowledge workers' days. So to your point on developers, like that definitely seems to be bearing out. And I think also for experts in various industries, like the cost of expertise is going way down. So like you could say, hey, specialized agent or even just general LLM, give me a market analysis.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe you don't need to pay McKinsey. Maybe you have an internal person on staff or and I'm not picking on them, although I'm happy to pick on them too. But for a lot of specialized expertise, I think the cost of that goes way down. And so it's actually like executives get a decent amount of value out of it, typically with low effort, and then developers get a ton, are the two stats I've seen.
Yeah, and actually, I was just on a phone call today, and a company pursuing ISO, not certification, but alignment into that. One of the things they're asking for, like, hey, are there things out there to help us, and all this? I was like, yeah, there are a number of kits out there that you can buy, prepackaged policy. I was like, but seriously, like, AI is pretty close. So just ask AI on pointed things, ask it to develop a policy for you. It'll give you the same template for no cost of the thing.
You need people to review it. Like
no doubt,
and all that stuff.
And Taylor, but that's what you're doing with the kit anyways.
Absolutely right.
So it's kind of killing the market. Like there wasn't a huge market for that, but there was a market.
No, absolutely right.
Yeah. That it's you don't buy like 24 policies and then customize it to yourself and all that stuff and everything. So, but yeah, I think it is generally good for security. I mean, we have actually 2 security AI reviewers through all the code and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks not only just like performance, but if there's any security issues, it'll pop it up immediately into that.
Yeah.
And then we'll fix it right on the spot there.
Well, one thing I saw an article on today was, is AI good for the stock market related to Anthropic's launch? So
That was an interesting
I saw
dip.
like CrowdStrike fell 11%, Cloudflare 9.6% dive, and some SailPoint slid 8% is what was reported. And so I think they're a little worried about this Cloud Code security and what it's going to do to improve the situation.
but
Do you think that market reaction is because certain financial analysts or whatever just aren't sophisticated? They hear security and they don't recognize that, like,
I think so.
Like, it's, oh yeah, it'll replace SAST and DAST. Okay, who cares? And it's not a bunch of, or because there's an alternate approach here, or is it because some people think that, oh, this is the first of several dominoes that are going to fall, and so the market reaction is almost forecasting in nature?
Yeah, but I think that's a big leap. Like, SailPoint, like, okay, this is a security review. Like, they're not in the same space, into that. They might incorporate it into their engine,
Totally agree.
Into that, but
Right.
that's not taking over their tool.
Yeah, and that wasn't so much as a main point of the topic, but I thought it was interesting.
interesting.
As this came up, since we're talking about Claude Code. But you think about, is AI good for security? The one piece I don't think we're anywhere near ready for is the human out of the loop. I mean, that's just a huge
absolutely
piece.
agree.
Maybe
When do you think it will be, though?
Yeah, I don't. Not this year.
No, not this year.
Yeah, we don't make predictions
saying
here.
years.
But,
I think years. There might be. Again, it'll be little things at first,
right? Yeah.
Because I'm not comfortable AI sending emails directly on my behalf, but I have it drafting them. Type of thing.
Well,
And
just
then
like SOAR was, and you take one piece at a time and you automate it.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some announcements in the last week about being able to look at the false positives and the false negatives of some of like SOC work, analyst work, and then be able to start accelerating the reviews of that and the consistency of the reviews. But that's good. But then I found an article that was a little bit different, like recent AI security failures that have happened.
Right.
And even though like Amazon service was taken down, this was just a February 20th, I think, article in the Financial Times, and Amazon Web Services suffered at least 2 internal outages tied to its own AI coding tools, one in December of 2025, and I don't have the date on the other one, but they were saying that, well, engineers gave AI elevated privileges without adequate guardrails. And so it could do more than it was supposed to. And Amazon's official stance was that the outage was human error, not AI autonomy.
Right.
But still, AI in the system, in order to enhance stuff, ended up shutting down an entire part of that infrastructure.
Absolutely. Well, to your first sort of question, is it good generally? So my take on this kind of solidified a quarter or two ago, and I don't think I have a reason to change it yet, but it's basically on the offensive side, like for bad guys trying to hack in, it's going to let them innovate and iterate a lot faster than before, right?
Yep.
But the defensive moat for that basically remains the same, right? It's all your hygiene stuff that's been hard forever because people have been resource constrained and all that stuff. And I think from a defense perspective, the way that AI gets leveraged the best is in doing hygiene better, more consistently, cross-checking, all that stuff, right? So AI agents that can patch or alert or just find things better and more quickly, I think from a hygiene perspective will be applied. It'll be easier to be more consistent with stuff that like notoriously a bunch of companies get wrong.
Yeah. And that might be from the build process you're talking about with that.
Well, from an app dev perspective, but even just from like, not even like build app dev, but also just from a processes perspective.
Yeah. I guess the thing where security is lagging, but it's so hard not to lag, is like when it found all, those 500 0 days, type of thing. All of a sudden, if you have a malicious person that's
totally
highly
agree.
motivated, the patch cycle, you can even even if it was a
How would they
standard
keep up?
Yeah, exactly. Like 500 things rolled out. Well, that's going to take weeks to get it out to people.
Do you think we need to define 0 day? Does everybody think everybody knows what 0 day is?
Put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
basically, it's just
0
a-
day is an exploit out there
new
that
exploit.
doesn't have a patch.
Yeah,
Into it.
0 day of patch availability.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
but so one of the things that's going to happen that I was thinking about this too. So so you can unleash this scanner and it finds a bunch of stuff that the humans weren't finding for whatever reason, right? Well, think about your software dev supply chain, right? As that gets unleashed on all these old libraries in, or public code that people leverage everywhere. Teams that are actually responsible for like patching code and dependencies in code, they're going to get a typhoon.
Oh, how are they going to keep up?
It's going to be insane. Like you're almost going to have to use AI on the other side to iterate problems, challenges, evaluate these patches, all that stuff, and try to run it through a couple filters and analyze it as quickly as possible and have rollback plans where it doesn't work.
Well, just kind of thinking about that and thinking about the whole life cycle of what happens. You find these vulnerabilities, what's going to be expected? You're going to be expected to patch them. We're going to get into this a little bit further on our next topic, I think. But with we're seeing government regulation saying you need to respond faster.
Yeah.
Everything needs to happen faster. And if you take these 400 or 500 vulns that were discovered through AI, get it into the queues of people to fix, I don't know how they're going to do it. And but there's going to be an expectation that you're doing it because now you know.
Yep.
Now you know. Now it's negligence if you don't do something, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that I think it's exacerbated by the fact that we're talking about old it's almost like, not to jump topics too much, but it's almost like the quantum encryption thing we were talking about, where it's like, well, what happens if quantum hits and all the data breaches of the past, are now actual public?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that for code that's out there today. But the problem gets even harder because what about all the new code that's being developed and the speed at which new code can get developed by AI agents, especially when you have, I think, well-intended individuals putting stuff together, but they're not necessarily security minded and they just don't know to prompt the thing appropriately, or they don't know to cross-check or red team. Like, I actually think the volume of new code is going to go up.
Oh, yeah, it already is.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, you have all these vulnerabilities with old code that's going up. And it's just going to be kind of a nightmare as you have to react to all that stuff.
Yeah. So it'll probably be, if I would put my crystal ball on with this, there'll be a definite spike in vulnerability disclosures, into this. And the result will probably be that we'll have to have more gateway blocks into this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because we just can't keep up with the software that's exposed. Or minimizing exposure is always a good idea. But in that case, if you're having to deal with it, you got to slow down the pipe somehow.
Yeah, more allow listing approach than, than block listing.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm really worried about is, are the attackers going to use AI to generate exploits just as fast? And
Absolutely.
And then now what can you do to protect against that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's when you get into like AI on the defender side and like, well, what does normal look like and what are they doing? And is there context about what's really risky versus not so risky? And like, I mean, we've been talking about UBA forever. I think we're now actually just getting to the point where UBA can sort of start to be effective. Sorry, security vendors who say you've been doing it forever, but.
Well, I mean, it's always a kind of thumb in the air on trying to figure out what's normal, type of thing. Like if you're trying to figure out like the wind out there and your finger in the air and you're like, is that normal wind or is that like, a tornado is coming, And normally you can see normal, it's like going back and forth and all that.
Right.
But that's basically what they do is try to see what's going on. And it's like, is this a normal thing or
well, and one question I always
somebody blowing on my finger?
Yeah. Well, and a UBA question that I've kind of always had that I've never heard a great answer to is like, well, But what if you've been compromised forever? Like since putting this in place.
That's normal.
Right.
Yeah, it's normal. This all looks
I've heard that before. That's funny.
I mean, they obviously incorporate signatures, you know,
Absolutely.
and everything. So yeah, they're not blind to those.
But I do think it's getting to the place where like agent orchestration can do a thing where it's like, does this user typically do these things? Are some of these behaviors inherently risky? What's the destination of what they're doing? Oh, is that particularly scary or not? And then also you can orchestrate like how the alarming works a little more cleverly, or is it an outright block based on risk source and stuff? And it's the architectures and patterns have been built for a while, but I think we're actually getting to a point where they can be really effective without having to hard code what risk looks like, and then that's a block list. And then when something weird happens that no one's ever seen, it's an all list. So to your point, Joe, I absolutely think that's going to happen more and more and more. But I think the tools are going to get a little better on the defender side too.
Yeah. I mean, they have to. And we've already seen like some examples, but honestly, I haven't seen enough security people like fully dive into AI into this. In fact, it's funny, I was going to mention it, but I just wrote a kind of a letter to my entire company. It's only like 5 people, 5 counting me, you know, type of thing. But it just basically saying like, we need to basically consider AI as a first thing, but that doesn't mean it's AI blind. You know, it's like, hey, start considering what you can use AI to like speed up what you're doing, augment what you're doing. Like, you know, I showed you that that app that I was kind of working on to source stuff from the internet to get into my mailbox where I can put eyeballs on. You know, it saves me the time to try to reach out and pull that. You know, and everything. Just things like that. Like you start thinking like a sysadmin trying to script something, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I could do this.
I can just do that.
I could do this, or I could do this, you know?
I like the concept of thinking about AI as kind of a commodity tool.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like the internet, right? At this point. And when the internet was kind of becoming a thing, you would have to talk to people and be like, hey, you know, you might want to consider sending an email as opposed to walking all the way across the office and up a couple floors, you know, or doing a phone call. You could just send an email. And so you change the mindset to your point about like AI first. It's like AI first, but not AI only.
Yeah, and
like
I
always
said in there, not
consider-
AI blind.
Yeah.
Like you don't ask and take whatever and throw it in, you know, into whatever bucket. It's like, how can I help to get to where I want to go faster?
Yeah, you
know,
have to
type of
build the
thing.
habit.
Yeah. You know, but a lot of people like outside of a simple chat prompt don't know the capabilities. Like I'm starting to incorporate stuff like drafting emails on my to-do and it'll throw it in my draft box.
Yeah.
And then I go up and review it and tweak it and send away. So it's helping me be way more efficient with the time that I have. And you guys know, being business owners, like it's just, you know, constantly shifting mindsets to, you know, to operations, to delivering, to finance, you know, to all this stuff. And you're like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. You know, like, you know, with it, it's like, oh, I got to focus on the marketing website. Oh, I got to focus on now delivery. You know, it's like
I actually added a thing to my morning routine now every day. And I basically, so I'm like a Gemini shop. So I go to Gemini and I say, hey, every day, and I built some gems around this and all this stuff. And I said, hey, every day I want you to give me a new use case for using AI that I'm not currently using it for. And they're not always fantastic, but there have been a couple things where it's like, oh yeah, that's a good use of time, or oh yeah, that's an interesting application.
Yeah.
And it's taken a while to get off the ground, like adding all the context of the business and all that stuff. So it's like saying, oh, do you want to email like, here's how we can make your entire HR department, you know, way more efficient. I'm like, well, my HR department's me, so I don't need I don't need massive analytics here, right?
put a glass of bourbon in front of you.
But it has been really helpful and interesting in having that, because I think some of the thing with AI is people are apt to think of it like a silver bullet. Like I just build this one thing and now everything's so much easier, when it is more about like habits and patterns and incremental automation over time, all that sort of stuff.
It's interesting. I was talking a couple of weeks ago, an employee from Meta, he was telling me that they get measured on their AI usage.
I was at that dinner with you.
Yeah. So like that they actually, the company monitors how much they actually engage with AI on a day-to-day basis. And they basically have a quota, you know, into that. And I think, I'm not going to get into the.
They're a unique. Their culture's
yeah,
unique,
exactly.
I think.
But I think it's a way to force habit, into that. Now that you're basically being measured on it, you're like, okay, how can I do that? And he was telling me that some people were even writing scripts to like tickle AI every now and then. Just to get the,
So instead of the little thing to keep pushing your
Yeah,
mouse,
exactly.
the duck thing. Yeah. Go ask AI
what's the weather
questions.
now? What's the weather now? What's the weather now?
Well, one of the things I loved to do whenever you look for the breach, right? You look for the news article about the breach, and what you really want to get into is what are all the things that happened to this company? What are the controls that failed? And what was the write-up? What are they going to have to do? What are they going to have to fix?
Right.
And what happened to them? Because I don't want that to happen to me. And so now, just a really easy use case for how AI can help security practitioners is, analyze the public reporting of these breaches, and then take a look at our own architecture, like all the documentation. Like you have access to everything inside the organization. Review it, review the controls. Tell me if this is tell me what percentage I'm likely to have this happen to me.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to fix it? And then go to your risk register, see what risks you have, see if you need to increase the probability of those risks come to fruition, and then get that into your work pipeline.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, especially like that vulnerability, the Oracle vulnerability that so many companies have got hit by.
Yep.
Like if you knew like, a lot of people were getting hit by that. I wonder what our asset list looks like, And if it had a connector into ServiceNow or something like that,
Right.
like, oh, look at that, we do have that version,
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Write me a triage plan. Write me a remediation plan.
Yeah. So do we think defensive teams should be like adding not just general AI stuff to the budget, but like, hey, I'm going to need more compute because we're going to need to analyze stuff, or we're going to have to run through things through the engines and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think, honestly, in my personal opinion, I think we need more training around it than tooling.
That's where I was gonna
right
go.
now. And once
think
you
that's a good point.
understand the concept and the tooling, then you can look for innovative solutions out there. And when you get it, you're like, oh, they're using this in this way to do that. Okay, that's cool. A lot of it, there's a lot of flash out there. They'll slap AI on the side of the cart and be like, hey, we're AI enabled.
Right.
And now it's like, okay, what does that mean? Well, sometimes we prompt you a button that you can ask questions. Like they just build
we have a
another
chatbot in the corner.
Right, yeah,
that
that's
just
not
goes
what we-
straight to
that's
like
not what we're
Chat
looking for.
GPT. It's like, oh, okay.
And then that stuff's still running on the outside. So the training I think that would be good is how do you bring this in? How do you set up a cost-effective internal LLM, train it on your data, and then not have it going out to be trainable on the public models, right? And then you can ask it real questions. And so, but out of all the people out there, I mean, like,
But you don't
what
necessarily
percentage?
need your own LLM. I mean, by default, the enterprise accounts for Anthropic and ChatGPT turn off training.
Sure,
Yeah.
but your data still ends up in their database.
I mean, your data's already in Microsoft and Google, and
It might be, but recently wasn't there just an announcement by, was it OpenAI that, and help me out here if you remember better than me, that anything that you're telling the AI is not protected from subpoena. And so as private, any search you had, any history, that kind of stuff, they may not be training the model, but they certainly have logs on what you're asking and their responses. And so the benefit of an internal LLM is it's actually none of that stuff's being stored in their
still
their
subpoenable.
but it's in your area. You can control it. You can decide you want to get rid of stuff sooner. You don't know how long you're going to keep it.
That's fair. Yeah.
But it comes back to training, and I'm thinking like there's probably a huge
Right.
knowledge gap. How many people out there actually know? How do you set up your own internally and get it working?
Yeah.
Well, how do you even, to your point about a lot of flash, some of that's on software, but if people don't know, they're like, well, I know I need training or I need to get my team training. How do you determine the good training from the bad then?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean,
good point.
everybody's doing training on AI, right now.
Well, and it's all very like wild wet. It's very much like, well, here's what I know about it. Well,
Yeah.
how do you know that? Well, I did a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well, was it the right?
I
Like,
spent 3 hours doing it, and now I made a YouTube video, and now I'm getting clips.
I was
type of thing.
well, to your point about like in a couple years, like where's the offensive and defensive security going to be because of AI? I was talking to someone about this today. I was like, dude, when did AI videos start to become a thing? It's only been 2-3 years. You remember like the video Will Smith eating spaghetti?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now you have like practically photorealistic long form videos of people doing things.
Did you see the comparison of Will Smith eating spaghetti and from 3 years ago and then
and then currently,
the current
yeah,
one?
that's right. That was a little bit ago.
Yeah, that was.
And then
so
what was
impressive.
was it Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise fighting? Did you see
Oh,
that?
I missed
I
that
don't think I
one.
know that one.
That just came out. It was at DeepSeek, the model, like a few weeks ago, and they had basically a full fight scene between both of them.
Oh, was that like everyone was freaking out because it was like so long form?
It wasn't
and it was
that
like
long.
consistent? Oh, okay.
I didn't see a long. No,
All right.
it was basically like a 30, 45-second clip of basically them fighting, like action movie fighting, and that was all AI. You know,
there was one where it's like I saw a minute 30 or a 2-minute clip that was like hyper consistent with details and stuff
Okay.
like that. And so people were freaking out because, there's certain, there's like internet communities around this, like, is this AI? Right. And so as it gets better and better, certain tricks for telling, well, they cut it at the 40-second mark, and so that's indicative of, not having enough processing or not wanting to spend all the tokens or whatever, as opposed to, oh yeah, look, this is a 4-minute video and it's and look at the trees in the background or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's getting better and better. My point with that is, though, it's accelerating so quickly.
So
Oh, yeah.
instead of six
Insanely
fingers, it's instead of
right.
having 6 fingers in your hand,
Yeah.
it's a 46-minute video or
Right.
46-second video.
So then, like, what training's adequate? Because everyone's figuring it out almost fresh every month.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's more the capabilities. And really, we're seeing a big thing right now where Anthropic is focusing a lot on connectors and tools. And now, like, ChatGPT is as well, into that. I think that's where the main value is going to come from. It's not necessarily the models are good, but they keep getting nudgingly better, type of thing. And we're going to like see them get, minorly better.
They're commodities.
But
Yeah.
when they connect into your back-end data stores
Right. I was
and
just
your
thinking that.
emails and like
We start
I have
really
it like
using
for
RAG.
development going
Yeah.
into our back-end database server, like, oh, something's wrong, and it looks at my database schema. I'm like, there's a problem.
Yeah, the simplification of the integrations is
Yeah.
going to be and making it so easy that you can have you don't need to be a computer security expert
Right.
Yep.
to put it in place, but you probably still want somebody in our field to take a look at it and make sure you
Yeah, double check, confirm.
did it
But-
right.
But from a training perspective, I do think you hit a super good point, which is like, well, it's less about tools and specifics. It's more about like patterns and capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
More about like, how could you be using this? How should you be thinking about building out the habits? Where should you go for news on this stuff? What's
Mm-hmm.
meaningful? What's not? Like that kind of stuff is a bit more evergreen, probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like you guys saw the commercial I did for Episky. That was all AI.
Yeah.
Different parts of AI. Google was the video. Then, well, I guess I did Final Cut for some of the stuff, but then 11 Labs for the voiceover and everything. Like all that stuff. If you know the best of breed and can marry them together,
Right.
that's going to be, that's where I think the training needs to be, is like, how do I get the best components out of these things, connect them together, get a data source talking to them, and all of a sudden you got a thing that you can direct, do stuff, prepare for you, review, basically condense into, here's what you need to focus on, Justin, and I'm sure it'll make, mistakes along the way, but it'll make less mistakes than, a junior person,
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and even if it doesn't to some extent, if you're killing all the hard costs associated with context switching between this task and that task and that task, like you can go regenerate it again better next time. Like if the tools aren't perfect, then okay, then you do something else. But if you're not like killing a ton of time in it, like this is always what I think of as the executive mindset, where it's like earlier on in my career, I'd go like, oh, well, they make decisions so fast and they don't have all the information. Yeah, the reason they're an executive is because they're good at making decisions fast. They're good at understanding what kind of decisions are irreversible versus what are reversible. And an early decision now is typically like that allows you to rewind is much better than no decision or the wrong decision or analysis paralysis. So I kind of get that from the AI thing quite a bit. It's like, yeah, you can iterate a bunch of stuff super quickly.
Yeah.
And if one of them isn't perfect, all right, iterate again.
Yeah.
Or throw it in another orchestration agent to red team it or whatever.
Yeah. That was, I'm not sure we covered it on the podcast. I think it was in one of our notes with it, but somebody did a study on, they sent a professional red team, over targets, and then AI over target, and did that comparison. It was probably a while ago. Maybe we did. I don't. Either which way,
I don't remember talking about it.
No, I don't either.
It came down to AI was more comprehensive. It got all the vulnerabilities. It was more kind of scope, into that. But the red team was better at looking at the business logic and finding vulnerabilities out of there.
Like what's practical, what's more likely, what's the actual prioritization type stuff.
Basically the red team was getting the high level fruit, and AI was getting all the low level fruit, into that, with it. And so you look at that, you're like, well, so I'll start with AI, get a clean bill of health, and then pay somebody else to look at it.
Right, or manually prioritize.
Because I don't want to pay $20,000 for a pen test if all they're going to find is low hanging fruit.
Right. And let me go fix all those things first,
exactly.
and then bring in the pen tester.
And then they
to do
can
it.
focus on the week that I'm paying them to try to find bigger
That's
stuff.
exactly right.
Yeah, exactly.
It reminds me of if we look at you ask a junior analyst, hey, write a bunch of risks about what you're seeing in the organization, and it'll be all these technical risks, and maybe they won't even be real risks.
Yep.
They haven't been trained up. But what you're saying is, well, all risk is business risk. How do I reform this into a business risk? And how is AI is probably not ready to be able to talk about the business risk implication of the problem it found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can pull out some analogies. I mean, there's data out on the internet. I'm sure it can find some of the stuff and correlate that. But when you're sitting in front of somebody and, adjusting on the moment, like that's where a human has to, do that. Like I've done, I don't know if you guys have run into this. If you're like interviewing somebody over the phone, I've had cases where they'll pull up AI to answer questions and they'll have it like,
I've heard a lot of that.
I actually had it happen to me, a developer that I was hiring for.
Yeah.
And you could just tell the answers were straight out of the AI playbook, giving you like the most simplistic example of, something that I asked, type of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a college kid that just got their degree but doesn't have practical experience yet. Like the textbook answer is not always the right answer or the best answer.
Well, and this is where so everything we're talking about with security, I might switch a little bit into this. This is where I think the biggest danger of AI, like coming out of this, it's like trying to teach somebody math, but hand them a calculator immediately, type of thing.
Right.
Like our kids are growing up with like AI at their fingertips. If their first response for everything is to run to AI, and not to think logically about it, it's like, all right, like, let's talk about that. I was having a conversation with my daughter. We were talking about like the early times of basketball, and she's like, "Well, it was illegal for women to play basketball." Or I was like, "That's not true, Lila. Like that's not a thing." It's like she's like, "Well, not a lot of them play." I was like, "Well, that's different." Into that. She's like, "Well, there was a lot of people that died playing basketball too." It was like, Lila, that doesn't make sense. Like that's not a true thing. It's like we learned it. I was like, well, then you're learning the wrong stuff, But that's where like, I get afraid of we're not teaching kids like how to learn, or even adults, on how to like properly do this stuff. Like we're pretty learned, we pay attention, reflect.
School hard
stuff.
knocks.
Yeah, exactly. But if your answer to I have to write a paper is to go to AI first and get a paper done, type of thing, like.
Well, here's my personal experience, and I find myself falling into this this pothole sometimes myself, and I'll want a quick answer to something, and I want so I go to AI to get me some help me draft something up here, and it'll give me stuff, and it's just so obviously AI, and somewhat of it is garbage, some of it is tangent, and I'm like, it's taking me twice as long now to actually answer this question where I already knew the answer, and I just didn't want to, I was too lazy at this moment, or didn't have time in order to actually write this thing out. And I was hoping it would just write out what I was intuitively
what
thinking.
I wanted. Yeah.
And instead, I got this, and then I go down a rabbit hole, right? And then I start like, oh no, correct this part. All right, throw it in Canvas inside of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
All right, now edit this part. And I'm like, till I was all done, I could have just wrote the 3-sentence reply and been done. But I just wanted to see what would happen.
Yeah, I think so. You were talking about people maybe not learning or not being able to do maybe even content generation like they did in the past if AI becomes ubiquitous and everyone can use it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think what ends up happening is the problems change, right? So yeah, people aren't as good at content generation. And you have this stuff on the side, which becomes artisanal document creation or whatever, right? Because people are like building it themselves by humans, and that'll be a differentiator sometimes or whatever. But what happens is as content gets generated so fast, like we were talking about code before, the problem no longer is how do I build code more quickly? The problem is how do I sift through all this code? How do I like it ends up being dead internet theory, but for AI stuff. So I actually think content curation, knowing how to trust your sources, making sure that you're diligent about citing things. I think people are going to start to spend a lot more time on identifying the nature and sources of the information that is coming to them, as opposed to like researching it themselves. It'll be totally different.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting concept, but I just got maybe off that topic because we're talking about training, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just handing somebody AI without the fundamentals is, I compare it to handing somebody a calculator without knowing how addition works. It's like, okay, let me type and here's the answer, type of thing. It's like if you don't know the fundamentals of it, you're just
was it a hallucination?
Yeah, exactly.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
So, I think that was a great topic. My conclusion is I think AI is good for security. I think it's going to be good for a ton of stuff. I really, I think that it's not ready yet for you to hand over the keys and let it take something from beginning to end without human in the middle.
So no vCISO AI?
No vCISO AI. I think there's enough of that happening right now.
Trademark.
Yeah.
It's trademark.
yeah. And I think that really it's used with caution.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea of training. Maybe a future topic we can do is some research and just talk about what we find, what we've been using for training, what's worked, what's not.
Yep.
But I don't think we're at a point where AI for good is equal out there right now as AI for bad. So
yeah, I think it'll be asymmetric, but like benefiting defenders more than attackers eventually.
Yeah.
But right now it's still so Wild West. People are figuring out how to use it.
Honestly, I think it's the most beneficial right now is GRC people. I find that all the time. Like we're deep into content and evaluations and looking at stuff, and we're so process focused that it's just ripe for GRC to get like AI embedded into some of the process.
Well, not only that, but you no longer, if you can trust what you're seeing, you no longer need to like go get a network security expert to explain and break something down to you.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask some intelligent questions. If you learn how to ask the right questions, do the prompt engineering properly, then you can start to get answers to things that otherwise it would have been harder for you to get to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. I was just on a pen test, summary report, on a call and everything. And one of the things, like, they identified some device. And they're like, we didn't know what it was. So we asked AI, and it said it was a DVR, into that, like, was it in the presentation. I just thought it was funny. It's like, so we looked it up. It was a DVR, is what it said. I was like, okay. You're like, so,
that's funny.
Was it really a DVR?
I don't know. It was just, in the test and everything. They did screenshot it that said it was some model of DVR not supported anymore, into that, which could be true. In the context of the customer I was on, it could absolutely be true. So
the trust question is interesting. It'll keep being interesting. Like, can I trust AI for that? It's like, I don't know. Can you trust that wiki that you Googled for that? I don't know. Exactly. Can you trust that expert that you're paying that you don't know their entire history for that?
Yeah, there was a customer, and you would be in the meeting with them. and they would be explaining to their other departments the answers to something.
Yeah.
And as you're sitting there, you're like, the only thing I can think of in today's terms is, wow, he was hallucinating that answer.
Right.
That was nowhere near-
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to like defend or attack AI, but I do think the trust question's interesting. And I've been saying for a while, like I think we're going to actually start to move more and more towards like a trust-based economy, whether it's just process-based or even like money-based. But I think that'll be the thing, because as there's more and more content, like where did it come from? How do we source it? How do you sift it? That's crazy.
And I also think like we're probably going to, I agree with you, but we're probably going to have to go into the realm of how much I need to trust it. You know, type of thing.
Absolutely
So look
agree.
at that DVR example. Like, do I have to put my full faith and, you know, my everlasting soul in that it was a DVR?
Right.
No. But their scanner said there was a port open and this is the device. And you're like, so I have enough, you know, concrete. Is it the DVR? I'll accept that for now, you know, but I'm not going to, rely on that to my deathbed. You know,
I've absolutely had conversations recently about this. Like, well, should we use it to define like patient meds right now and just trust it blindly without checking?
I would say no.
Should we use it to like define material strengths that go into buildings and just trust it blindly? Maybe not. But can I use it to like plan a vacation for me? And I'm not like, yeah, I probably can. If it's not fully optimized or it makes a mistake, like, okay, who cares?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It'll be
I
fine.
got so many good ideas for vacations for that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But you're right. So like figuring out like what's the importance or reversibility of a decision is absolutely going to be part of like the new habits that people form interacting with AI daily.
Yeah. Great.
That's good.
All right. Next topic here. Oh, there it goes. CIRCIA.
So first, it's CIRCIA, and it's a federal law passed in 2022 that requires covered critical infrastructure entities to report cyber incidents in 72 hours and ransom payments in 24 hours. But that's not really the most important part. The most important part is, how does everybody pronounce, yeah, sure, thanks, CIRCIA. And
that's a whole topic for this.
That's the whole topic. So as I was prepping, I was like, oh man, I wonder what everybody's saying this is. And so I went on the ChatGPT and I said, how's everybody pronouncing this? And it basically came out and said it's CIR, key, KEY, CIRCIA. And it says, and here's
Did you have something different? You had CIRCIA.
I thought CIRCIA.
Okay.
But it's just because I'd never heard it. I've seen it in a ton of writing, but I've never heard it pronounced.
Yeah. That's the same with me.
Yeah.
And it said I'm like, all right, is it hallucinating this or does it really know? Most practitioners say it as a word, not letter by letter.
Yeah.
And you may occasionally hear somebody spell it out, CIRCIA, but in industry conversations, CIRCIA is the norm. I mean, is it really? I have
cite
no
your
idea.
sources.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't ask it to do that. But
So anyway, we want to know, right? We want to know what the listeners think.
yeah, how do you say
How
it?
should you say this?
Yeah. Is it Night CIRCIA or is it CIRCIA? Like Game of Thrones? You know?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So,
But anyways, you want to continue introducing the
sure.
outside of the pronunciation, which is very important.
Whatever you want to call it. But CISA is writing the final rule, and it's expected in May of 2026. And the law, I understand, is already in place, and the rules define how it works operationally. So it's not a breach notification law, but it's more of a federal situational awareness law. Mm-hmm. And what they're looking for is covered entities, in this case, these 16 critical infrastructure sectors, like things like healthcare, financial services, energy, transportation. This rule could affect about 300,000 entities they're talking about.
And that's directly impact.
Directly impact. Mm-hmm. And it's not just limited to large enterprise, but mid-market companies will fall in scope. And so it has a couple triggers.
Yep.
And one of them is a cyber incident to to be disclosed. The clock starts, the 72-hour clock starts when you reasonably believe there's an incident occurred. So reasonably believed an incident occurred.
Lawyers will have a field day.
Yeah, and then 72 hours is your clock for reporting. And then ransomware payments, you need to make a notification that you paid a ransom in 24 hours.
Yep.
And I'll pass the baton here, but that's kind of the background.
Yep.
And it has a lot of implications, and it also is way different than all the other things that are already published for these notification timelines.
You're talking about all the state.
Yeah, HIPAA
State
breach
breach,
notifications,
state, yeah, all that stuff. They all have different timelines.
Yeah, the SEC
Yep.
disclosure. So there's different clocks for each of these.
So I think there's a couple traps that I get maybe not nervous about, but like want to make sure that if you're impacted by this, like that you're thinking about. One is that 72-hour thing is reasonable suspicion of a material cybersecurity breach. First and foremost, I don't know who has had the joy of these conversations in the past.
I've talked material with lawyers.
Materiality with lawyers and finance people, and if you're public versus not public, and all of these things get crazy fast.
Are you sure this is material, though? I was
Pretty
looking
sure.
through
I thought it was material breach. I would love to be corrected.
Yeah, keep going and everything.
No, I mean, I'll be happy if I am, because I think that part of it potentially makes it difficult. Because one of my notes here was like, if you haven't defined what constitutes a material breach, like with lawyers and finance people, assuming this is in the regulation, do that now. Because I think that can be a trap if you haven't, or if it's not in here, it's in another regulation.
Well, it's between an incident and a breach, and there's some customers I work with where they're very adamant to say, well, we have an event.
Right.
And that event isn't even an incident unless it does these things for our impacts.
Yeah.
And then it only becomes a breach when this happens because they have contracts that say they must notify their customers for security incidents. And so once that was figured out, they had to make sure they trained everybody on, is it an event? Is it an incident?
So make sure you're clear about that, because the 72-hour clock will start in some situations, but it might not in others.
Oh, absolutely. And, the clock problem is a huge one because, your SOC detects activity, and then it takes time for forensics to become something that figures out if there's something happening. You don't even
know, something is happening. You don't even know what it is yet.
Right.
Often.
And who all wants to know? Well, your leadership wants to know. Legal doesn't want to start doing any reporting until it's confirmed. But that CIRCIA clock may already be running.
Right.
And it may have started already on that. So imagine you have a 72-hour CIRCIA notification, HIPAA 60 days. A lot of state notifications are 30 days.
Yeah.
4 days. Is it 4 days for the SEC disclosure? And
I should know that. Yeah.
And then, what's your cyber insurance notice? Usually they want to know you got
something
like 24
happening.
hours or things might go wrong.
And you
And
have
all
to be
the states, depending on the residents that are affected and what's involved with the data.
And you end up running legal liability risk if you're not consistent in your responses, right? So, we were worried about CIRCIA, but we weren't as worried about state breach laws or whatever. It's like, well, that doesn't really hold up. If you could take one seriously, you need to take the other one seriously, or else you might get penalized the same way. So I think that's one thing. Whether materiality or not is a thing, like defining materiality, just knowing what constitutes reporting and not. I think you're looking it up, so you can tell me if I've hallucinated that.
So the couple of things I looked up, and I just asked AI as the final thing. It's a no, not in the traditional
I don't know why I thought it
sense.
was. Okay.
A substantial cyber incident is triggered by any of these. Substantial loss of
substantial.
Loss of CIA of information systems, serious impact of safety and resilience of operational systems process, disruption in ability to engage in business operations or deliver good services, unauthorized access facilitated through a supply chain compromise, including MSPs or CSPs.
Yeah. So still fairly qualitative, and make sure you define what significant is before that 72-hour clock starts ticking.
But this isn't just like maybe a simple phishing, like
No,
so
right.
This wouldn't be phishing, but this is data got stolen that's confidential with that, or you're down and it impacts the operational ability. Again, this is critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I think if your HR system goes down, they probably wouldn't care, into that. But if it affected service, maybe
there are going to be gray areas in terms, we use this as a document exchange.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it operational or is it not? I don't know. Oh, well, this is how we report KPIs. Well, it definitely is. Oh, this is how we do QBRs. Well, maybe only at certain times it is. So anyway, just be clear up front.
Well, I do like your materiality conversation as well, because I think every organization really needs to think that through.
Yeah.
And the severity of the impact of the incident is going to be highly related to the materiality to the organization.
Yeah.
That takes the severity from a continuity or a IT kind of conversation into what really matters is what the business impact is, and that becomes, is it a material problem for the business? Well, and we hit about the incident side and the notifications. The other part that I'm a little worried about with this is ransom reporting implications, because if you need to tell the federal government that you've paid a ransom within 24 hours of making that payment, what does that do? It's going to impact your negotiation strategies, whether you pay at all. And a little bit of it almost feels like it's a disguised way of creating I've been ransomware reporting requirement that didn't exactly exist before, because now you're not just saying how to pay ransomware, but how much, the details around it, I think they're looking for.
Yeah, it's like it's a cooling factor to try. It could be to try and make people pay less. I could see that, because I hadn't thought about that before, but it absolutely could impact. Like, the bad guys will know if you have to report if you pay a ransom, so they're going to adjust their tactics accordingly. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's been for a while. I think, isn't the FBI's whole stance, or it used to be, like, no, don't pay the ransom. They're always encouraged, don't pay the ransom, because every time you pay the ransom, now you're funding somebody. And if you do pay the ransom and that money goes to certain countries that you're not allowed to put money into, now you're actually breaking some.
It's a collective action
laws.
thing. If nobody ever pays the ransom, then people try and extort other people less.
Right. And so I don't know.
That's the
if
idea.
it's,
I mean, and that came from, never given like kidnappers or whoever.
Yeah, we don't
it is.
negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, exactly. Type of thing. And they try to translate that over to ransomware, but I think the thing that they really didn't consider is, like, all my data is gone unless I pay $10,000. And for a business, you're like, I'm gonna pay $10,000. Like,
yeah, depending on what it is, and I don't want to say how much you trust, but, like, if that's not the most material thing in the world to you, like, in terms of, like, well, can I pay $10,000? Then, like, all right, well, your option is nothing or maybe something.
Yeah.
And then there's all sorts of international law and, like, all sorts of things that apply. But ultimately, if you're like a small business owner and you get ransomed, I mean, your risk profile is different than, like,
$10,000 might be all you have in your bank,
it could be.
But yeah, when you go into a bigger company that, either you're going to spend 3 weeks getting everything back, or get the decryption key and get everything done in a day, type of thing. And for the most part, like, I've heard a number of presentations around this. For the most part, it's not always rule. These ransomware people want to maintain trust into that they're going to give you the decryption key, because if that falls apart, then nobody's going to pay it.
Right.
So most of the time you're getting that decryption key to rescue yourself, into there.
Yeah, it's complicated. Then talk to your lawyers in those situations. But
the other part that I thought was interesting, if you want to talk about this, I'm not sure how this got into the concept here, but the connection with CMMC.
Yep.
So the CMMC requires documented incident response capabilities, and CIRCIA adds mandatory federal federal reporting. And so for defense contractors, if you're in the defense industrial base, now you have both CIRCIA plus CMMC requirements that are hitting you. And so, at this point, for defense contractors, you got to expect that the contract clauses are the prediction is the contract clauses are going to start referencing CIRCIA. Assessors are going to ask how reporting is tracked. Like how's your clock work for this stuff, and when's that clock start? And your IR documentation is going to need to have a little bit more growth, a little bit more maturity.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought about reading this, because I didn't see anything explicit, but I think, and this is what I was getting at when I said directly impacted before, because of the way I was thinking materiality, but the way they define significant.
That's a lot in the financial
but the way, like,
breach.
is it big enough, right?
Yeah.
Well, if your vendor gets popped and has an impact on your operations, your clock has started.
Yeah.
Right? And you might be completely beholden to their analysis investigation of the what happened side of things. And so for critical vendors and all this, so when you say like
Change Healthcare.
right. So you say like, oh,
nobody heard that name before
Right.
they got breached, And they're like, wow, they're really connected to a lot of things.
Everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
In fact, what was that breach that's going on right now? I forget the name of the company, but they process like most of the Snap processing.
Right. Yeah.
And they're saying like 25, 30 million Americans are actually impacted by this breach. The people were in there for 5 months, just sitting in their network, into that. So, yeah.
But so I think one of the things that I was thinking about is if you are one of the lucky 300,000, right, that need to do this, like if you haven't already thought about your critical vendors or suppliers or people that could, in theory, drive an operational consequence, or access is in there. So a breach of, if you do like any kind of staff aug or have a staffing firm or something, a breach of like their account that could map into your environment. Like there are things there that are worth thinking about that are new, and you might need to ask your vendors if they're critical. Hey, how are you going to help me comply with this thing?
Yeah, we're changing from, hey, we'll figure this stuff out after the incident as we do the triage and containment to classifying and reporting almost in real time, because how else are you going to meet the timelines?
So, honest question from you guys, or honest answer I want from you. How many companies do you think are actually going to follow this to the letter?
Let me ask you a different version of that. How many do I know that even have the capability based on their current processes to follow this?
Yeah, it's
not many.
It's few to both of those questions, but like the reality is,
how many can pronounce it?
Nobody.
Oh, you're asking about CIRCIA? I'm so sorry. I didn't produce anything. I thought it was CIRCIA. I was looking at the wrong thing. But I think like all of these requirements, it's very rare for it to be as direct as an if-then statement. If you fail, then you have this massive consequence. Like, it's if you fail, then a conversation starts with lawyers and regulators and. So...
But I'm just thinking about, like, I think all of us have been involved in one way or another with, breaches and all that stuff and everything. Almost the last thing in your mind, out in the beginning is, where's my lawyer? Like, you're trying to get, operational stability as fast as you can, or at least stop the bleeding. Like, that's your first priority.
Well, how bad is it? And is it getting worse? Yeah,
exactly. Like, that's your focus, is like, we're down, money's going out the door, whatever it is, like, we need to stop the bleeding now. The last thing you're thinking about, unless you're practiced and, know who to call to the table anytime something happens like this, is where's our lawyer at, type of thing. Like, that's not a thing that is immediate. You stop the bleeding and then you're like, okay.
Well, this is where things are going to change. They're going to have to. And you think about this. Let's keep this in context. This is not, the local candy store having
Yeah.
a problem. This is critical
Right.
infrastructure.
Right.
And so think your electric or your gas company or things like that. They're the ones that are going to have to really worry
But
about
you'd be
this.
surprised how much of
Oh.
a shell of a company people run that.
Critical infrastructure is terrifying.
Right.
So my parents had a house in around the 2000 timeframe up at Seven Springs area. At that point, when they bought that house, they were still getting bills sent to them handwritten. At that point,
Oh,
in
from
2000
from one of the
from
utilities
power
or whatever.
company. Yeah, from the power company there. It was like, what? Like, this is
Well, that's crazy.
When they signed up for a phone line there, and like Seven Springs is what, 2 hours away from Pittsburgh?
yeah.
It's not that far away. They asked if we wanted a party line, or a direct line when we signed up for a phone.
Did you get a party line?
No, we didn't get a party line. I had to ask my
a missed
parents. I was like,
opportunity.
"What's a party line? That sounds fun," type of thing. And for those who don't know what a party line is you're connected to multiple households, and you basically share a common.
It's almost like a walkie-talkie channel.
Yeah, if you think of the pain it was. Dating myself, trying to go on the internet with a modem and somebody picking up the phone, like it's basically that, to your neighborhood of cut talk.
Yeah, but worse. Like
Yeah,
I was on the party line when I grew up, and there were all like at least 7 or 8 neighbors. Some of them were family, like aunts and uncles that lived close by, and then others were just other people that I think my parents knew, but I didn't know. But we were in a small area.
Yeah.
And if you'd pick up the phone and you'd hear somebody talking, you'd politely hang it back up. But you could also hear it click when somebody does, and so and you'd hope they would hang it up.
Yeah,
but
right.
then remember, these are like the black phone on the wall with the handset and the big long cord for all of anybody who doesn't know this, with the actual circle thing where you'd have
The
to
rotary.
the rotary dial. And so it was that.
Do you ever watch the YouTube videos where like parents will get their kids to like,
Oh yes.
can you use this phone? Or
They're pretty
like-
entertaining.
They're like, I don't know. What is this thing?
Yeah.
They're pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping this topic
yeah.
up here, I had some notes on what companies must do to actually build to get close to being operational with this. And you really got to start right now. Clear incident severity frameworks.
Yep.
Define what meets covered incident thresholds before the
Yep.
crisis. You got to figure that out.
Yep.
Reporting playbooks. You need to have these pre-drafted. And
templates.
to your point, the first note I had on this was, what's the legal review path? Like that is top of the list now, not the let's figure it out later.
And there are lawyer firms that actually specialize in breach notifications that you can almost not fully outsource, into it, but it's one call to say,
Right.
here it is, here's what we do, and they'll actually help you. They even have like media packages and all that stuff
well,
to help you.
if
do
you have
PR.
cyber insurance,
Yeah.
you probably already have access to this. And I'll tell you, there's another tangent here. There are a number of cyber companies who went and they bought cyber insurance, and I asked them how much of the cyber insurance benefits you taking advantage of. They don't even know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And so we start laying it out, and I said, well, let's look together. There's probably a place to go log in. Let's call up your broker who negotiated this for you from one of the agencies. Let's start asking them questions. And then we end up getting tons of good information, playbooks, materials. They can even sign up on the where do you get educated about what's happening? You can sign up on the newsletter, and they'll send you when something significant is happening. So all of these things make sense. So, but you're right. And on the panel of these cyber insurance is the lawyer you work with that you can pick from.
Well, make sure they're on the panel.
Yeah.
Make sure your
get
people
them on
are
the panel.
Yeah.
And and then also your incident response company. And you want to pre-negotiate. We probably talked about this before. You want to pre-negotiate these contracts.
We should do another insurance podcast.
Yeah. I'll wait for the rest of it. But but your reporting playbooks, you need to do that. What is your government submission process? You don't want to wait until the clock starts to go.
Have to look it up.
How do I actually?
I don't have access to that website.
How do I actually tell them? And how are you going to preserve the evidence? The clock ownership.
Right.
Like, who declares when it starts? What is the trigger? And how do you reasonably believe this is reportable? You need to document that. And then lastly here on the ransom decision protocol, is your board, I was just in a conversation at lunch about board level pre-alignment. Will we pay this? How much will we pay?
Right.
And we'd like to have some board members sit in where on some private companies when their top executives are going through a ransomware tabletop exercise and say, and we force the issue on, it's going to be a ransom needs to be paid.
Right.
Just to see how far away from being aligned they are. And the answers across the tables from executives in this conversation were like night and day. It was just crazy to see how unaligned they were until after the meeting. And that was like one of the first things we started hashing out. We got to, that was like one of the first lessons learned. Let's get to that, figure it out. And under, and then under what conditions would you pay? And so like all these things need to be, you can't wait until the issue happens now with this short timeline.
You have to do it up front.
And if you're in critical infrastructure, you really need to be on this.
Well, and I would say one other pro tip when we're talking about playbooks and reporting and things like that is as you're drafting your communications, draft a preliminary notification, which is to say, hey, everybody, we think we have a thing going on. We don't know what that thing is yet, but we're supposed to tell you that when we think we have something happening, we're going to tell you. So here's what we know so far. It's an evolving situation. And we'll get back to you in X hours or X days because
perfect.
You'll with these timelines.
Follow our status page because you can track security incidents into that or spin up a dedicated page real quick.
So with these, because with these timelines, you're not going to know.
We take your security very seriously at X company.
Not to a government regulator.
No. I don't know. I always see that like statement in right after they're telling you they had a serious breach and like we take your security very seriously.
You almost
at
have
our
to.
company.
But I will say draft a preliminary notification because you may be forced into a situation where you still don't know anything because it's been 72 hours and it took 24, like when does the clock start, all that stuff, and you realize, oh no, we're way behind the 8 ball. Okay, look, whoever your chief counsel is or whoever's like has access to the site, I actually don't know how reporting works for this, but whoever can do it is like, okay, well, put the default something's going on, we'll tell you more when we know more thing into the system so that you can move forward.
Right. And
draft that.
And pre-write that. That's part of your playbook. Have as much of that drafted as possible. Reminds me, a quick side story here is as we were doing things like third-party risk management at companies I was at, and we get to a point where somebody wanted to make the decision that they're going to go with a vendor, or I had this in multiple situations, or it was just an internal architecture decision. We're going to do it this way.
Yep.
And the security team's looking at it and saying, operationally, that's going to be a problem. This is a high chance of actually failing and breaching data. So, but we need to do it. Business decision, we have to do it. All right. Another business decision we're going to make right now is we're going to pre-draft the customer notification letter.
Oh, wow.
So let's just go and get the lawyers, sit down. The only way, first, I'm not signing off on this. You can have my boss sign off if you need sign off because you can't get this live unless one of us are saying yes. But you get that. The only condition I have is we pre-write the breach notification letter.
I love that
all
so
on the
much.
Sun end,
That's so
they're
good.
like, now wait, what?
Well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to get lawyers on the phone. That's funny.
That was always fun.
Great.
Yeah.
Good wrap up into this here.
Yeah.
Why don't we dive into the spirit of today?
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe, for supplying this. So we got WhistlePig, old rye whiskey, aged 12 years. And Rick, I'm going to let you pronounce it went into a secondary barrel.
Three secondary barrels,
Three
right?
secondary barrels, and then it got blended back into it.
Madeira, Saturnus, I think.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
All right.
Yeah, correct that pronunciation like CIRCIA as well on the comments. And then port. I know that
And
one.
then port, I got the port one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was
Saturnus.
this was specially blended for the PA fine wine and spirits.
Good spirits,
Good spirits, yeah.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people don't know, like a lot of the spirit companies have that. You can do your own bottle selects. It costs per barrel. It costs about 10 to 15 grand usually into that, but out of it you get 200 and 210, 200 some odd bottles out of it, depending on spirits, and there's a lot of variables.
Well, the way
into
I
that.
got introduced to WhistlePig was I was actually on a podcast at a company called Prospire, a Pittsburgh-based company. They help in healthcare, awesome partner, and they brought me on to do a podcast. And afterwards, I ended up getting a gift of one that they had blended, and so they went and they did the tastings. Were able to get this put together.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had like their own, instead of it saying for good or fine spirits, they had their company name on the label.
Oh, nice.
And
That's cool.
it was delicious.
So you're saying we should get Distilled Security Podcast actual spirits?
I think
that's
we
what
need
I
to get
got
our-
out of that entire
I
story.
think you're right. I think we need to get our own blend. All
right.
Yeah,
That'd be good. Yeah.
We'll make that a. I don't know if that could be a 2026 goal, but maybe a 2027 goal.
We'll get it eventually, into that. That'd be good. Yeah, and I've heard and I've seen actually some videos of people doing it. They put a whole experience together for, you usually get like 4 to 6 people that you get to bring with you.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and you get to spend. They'll pull barrels out for you, and it depends on the place. Usually, some I've seen you can like basically just point at the wall and select them. Some will pre-pull, and be like, here are, the 4 that you get to pick from and get to pick the best out of it. But yeah, it looks like a blast.
That's cool.
What's
That'd be fun.
what's the proof on this one again?
The proof is low. Was it 80?
86, something like that.
Yeah, it's 43, so 86.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of smooth.
43?
I
Yeah.
think this is delicious. I love this.
Yeah, it's very good. You can definitely get a lot of that wine after flavor after it. I would say it's probably like a little bit sweeter Angel's Envy. People are familiar with that. It has more of that because that's finished in port.
Absolutely,
Into that. So yeah, you get a little bit sweeter, and it's a better finish, I think,
It's
than
super
Angel
clean
Envy.
finish. Yeah.
Than Angel's Envy. But yeah, thank
Yeah,
you,
it's
Joe.
really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. If you own security, compliance, or risk, and it feels like you're always pushing a boulder uphill, I want you to know about CISO. CISO helps growing companies get audit ready, reduce risk, and stay resilient without drowning in tools, endless checklists, or one-time reports that quietly rot the moment the audit ends. This isn't shelfware. It's not drive-by consulting. With CISO, you don't just get advice. You get hands-on support from real security engineers, GRC specialists, and former CISOs who help you build, operate, and continuously improve your security program over time. Whether you're chasing SOC 2, ISO 27001, CMMC, HIPAA, or you're simply trying to get security under control so the business can move faster, CISO meets you where you are. Their managed VGRC model gives you enterprise-level expertise without hiring a full internal team or reinventing the wheel. The focus is simple: clear priorities, practical controls, and measurable progress leadership can actually understand. Visit CISOLLC.com and start the conversation. Security you can trust, compliance you can prove, and people you can depend on.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So for our next topic here, it's protect yourself against a changing compliance landscape. So what do we mean by that? So there are a number of things happening this year. So we got CMMC Phase 2, we got the potential for a HIPAA overhaul, which is pretty likely. We got CCPA audits triggering this year. We just talked about some of the incident response, reporting and everything. So how do you keep your head above water for all this stuff here?
Yeah, there's so much. And
Yeah.
did you just say incident response reporting stuff because you couldn't remember how to say CIRCIA?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, gotcha. The pronunciation, and then this too as well.
Right.
And so
Yep,
all of these items. We were chatting about this a little bit earlier, and everything has its own. It's all coming together. Everybody's like looking at who do I get to report to on what and what makes sense. And I always like to get it back to basics. Like, well, if I'm running a proper security program and I have all the right controls in place, then I'm probably most of the way there. And then it's almost like build once, audit many. And so that's how I want to kind of lead off the thought process is get the proper security program in place. get the and we were talking about, not to confuse it with the for sale unified compliance framework, but what is your internal unified control set that you follow, and then what are the nuances? And so if you're going to get audited for ISO or you're getting audited for something else, you have to go figure out what each of those specific pieces are.
Yeah, various scopes and things like that.
Mandatory
Tailoring, blah, blah,
documents,
blah.
right?
Yeah.
But my take is get the proper security program put in place, and then start to only add in the things that where you become required from all of this convergence.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, you basically, like, a good control will satisfy many frameworks. Like, if you have the right MFA, frameworks that need MFA, you'll probably check that box.
But I think, just to play a little devil's advocate into here, a lot of frameworks are selfish, into that, where they only care about their data, their systems, their particular, aspects of that. So you're not going to take like a standard of PCI and apply it to your entire organization, maybe, into that. There are scopes, there's limitations, there's into that. Even if you had a really mature organization and basically had all the controls, you're still limiting it from an audit perspective. So I think it's easier said than done to have I agree with you that if you have a good mature program, you can adjust easily to any demand, into that. But not everybody has the same maturity across different aspects of their business, or maybe, business units or subsidiary businesses, sister businesses, whatever it is. So all of a sudden it gets a little bit more complicated when you're dealing with 6 different systems that need MFA, not just one, type of thing.
It's true, but I guess it depends. Like anything else, you're going to have global controls, and then you're going to have controls for high risk areas. Yeah, and maybe there's reasons to cut it more granularly than that. There can be, but logically, I don't know that it needs to get all that more granular. So, okay, or systems with PCI data high risk areas? Yeah, okay, apply all the high risk controls. Okay, should all that satisfy typically PCI? Well, yeah, if you're not, you're probably doing it wrong. And to your point, there are going to be data specific things in certain cases or whatever. But for the most part, I think of MFA as a global control. So if you're doing it, you should be doing it everywhere that matters.
Right. But you have a dozen SaaS systems and someone doesn't integrate into your authentication system. So now you're managing the SaaS system through their admin interface, and have to manually turn on multi-factor. That's what I'm saying is there's multiple places where a control can diverge or have to be managed.
If your critical vendor isn't sampling back to you got
I'm
other
just
problems.
Saying, but there are some aspects of that.
There's always going to be exceptions.
Yeah.
But that's why you have exception management and approved exceptions and stuff like that.
Well, I think that's where evidence. So you have your control,
right?
Your standard for way of doing it, and what really is going to matter is whether I have to show 3 pieces of evidence or 1. I still need to make sure I can show evidence, and evidence becomes more important than policies. In fact, I've been in some audits where they're like, well, do you want to see my policies? Well, no, I need to see the evidence that these main controls are working.
I don't care.
Except if you're going through an ISO certification, and then they'll want to see your policies.
I was I don't care what you
Actually, I've been in ISO certifications where I barely glance at the policies, and the policy glancing was, pull that policy up, Control F, show me MFA, and then you see the one line. They're like, all right, I see you're covering it. I'm not looking for exceptions to that.
I'm talking about the phase 1 part of the certification where you have to submit all the documentation first, then they'll go into sampling and evidence.
I much prefer those types of audits, by the way. Don't certify against what I've written down, certify against what I'm doing.
Yeah, and even some of the SOC 2 audits I've observed, they're like, well, the auditor's like, I don't really require that you have a specific policy. I need to see the evidence that you're meeting this objective. Yeah. And so that kind of stuff comes into play.
And that's one of the things, I'm critical on PCI in a lot of different areas, but they came out years ago with their prioritized approach. It was a 1 through 6 scale on all their controls, 1 being the most important, 6 being the last thing you focus on. They put all their policy and documentation at number 6, Because guys, you got to get the controls together, implemented, then you worry about the documentation.
Yeah, you write it down last.
Yeah. So, like, if you're looking from a priority perspective,
Yeah.
So, yeah, and again, I agree with you, but it is a little bit more complicated when you're dealing with a bigger organization.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
you know this, like, trying to dig out a big organization now,
Yeah, it's
type
different.
of thing. That it's easier said than done to say, yeah, we have a mature program. It's like, okay,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
areas of focus that. Tomorrow we got to focus on this system because there's the upcoming requirement that's coming, due sooner rather than later. I can't just focus on entire company,
Right.
Implementation today.
But I do think at the heart of it, and rolling it back to like, well, how are you keeping up with all of these changes? Like, it's not going to slow down. Like,
No.
compliance is getting more and more and more. AI is going to layer that on top. And I mean, people complain like, oh, the law is not keeping up with technology or whatever. All right, well, give all the lawmakers AI and see how fast they start to run through additional legislation that has its own hallucinate. Like,
Talk about AI slop at that point.
it's not a prediction show, but I won't be surprised if we start to see legislation that, actually starts to get faster, or at least because, well, even if it's not the legislators doing it, the aides now have access to AI and things like that. And it's like, okay, you can, again, drafting things is no longer the holdup.
Well, and that was the funny thing, like bringing in Epstein into this. We've never talked about Epstein, but they did all that document dumps and everything, and it was thousands upon thousands upon thousands of documents. Like, nobody could go through and read all that. It would take you years, to read it cover to cover. And everybody was sorting it through AI. Be like, pull out these names, pull out these names.
Right.
What are this? Pull out like there was basically asking questions against that trove of information, into it.
So I think, like, how do you keep up? It ends up being like, okay, well, no, actually, how do I just engineer continuous compliance, right? And this gets back to automation, regularly, pulling via APIs evidence, like all those things, and making sure that you're utilizing systems that enable you to go fast, as opposed to like, yeah, I still have, half a dozen people in spreadsheets doing stuff.
Now, I'll throw in another devil's advocate here. So that's all great, but the way you're kind of framing that is you have dedicated people to do that. What if it's your most senior security person is the IT person also in charge of desktop builds and all that stuff?
Well,
how does a company like that keep on top?
Oh, well, I think either way you have to engineer it. Like, the nature of how you engineer it is going to be different, but either way, the compliance burden is just going to grow and grow. And if you don't engineer to deal with it, the problem, like, your solution isn't going to scale with the nature of the problem.
Yeah. But a lot of people, like, I've worked with organizations that they just don't know what they don't know, type of thing. So working with organizations where, I come into it and they're building every machine by hand and it's local authentication to this machine, into that. And they've grown to 100 people by that way. And we come into that, they're like, why aren't you like doing a Microsoft 365 subscription and syncing your like ID to that?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I didn't know we could do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Or
type of thing.
using-
Like, and that's like, and it's just like, we take stuff for granted. And then that's what I'm kind of saying, like, the smaller you get, into that, they might not know the landscape as obviously we know it. They don't know the solutions that apply to that landscape. They don't know how to architect what you're talking about, into that. That's why I'm saying, like, if you have dedicated CISOs, GRC, whatever security people, most likely they're going to be knowledgeable, at least in some capabilities, into that.
Yeah, but still the problem doesn't change. Like, at the end of the day,
I agree, but how do you get,
it's still a build versus
Jim
buy.
Bob to, focus on compliance?
Well,
it's a build versus
first,
buy.
he needs to subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Then he needs to understand there are people like us that can help him because he's got a day job.
That's what I was
and
going to.
You got to
exactly right.
work on it. And that's a good question. I don't really know that there's a great answer. That comes back to.
Well, I do have an answer.
We talked about training. What's your answer?
Do outsource it to somebody else. That has,
I got you.
Like
Okay.
a
I was going to say
VP.
that's why people hire.
There's so many things that, like, I'll have conversations, and this is a new concept for businesses, but focus on what you're good at. And if you're not core focus on it, outsource it.
Yeah.
Reasonably outsource it. Type of thing. So like, if you don't have the expertise, if you're 100 people, you don't have a security staff, don't try to hire then a full security. I worked with this one
do agree
company
with that,
that like I actually they actually tried to hire me. I said no, and one of the reasons was like I was talking to the CISO. He's like, we're building out our full owned SOC, Security Operations Center. It'll be 24/7.
Or fully internal, hiring people,
fully internal,
building the
12
tech, building the
people.
building.
We're
Yeah.
building out this fancy thing, and I'm like, but why? Like why are you doing that? Like
Yep.
that's not a core focus of you. Outsource it. Find a good partner, And there are bad partners and good partners, but you find a good partner. Why do you need to handle that staffing load, and build the systems and continually to do that? Pay somebody that does that for
Absolutely.
dozens of companies,
Like that's actually one of the things that and I've talked about this before, and I don't want to overplug what my company CISO does, but one of the core things that we do is just that. If you're a 100% company, the last thing you need is to add whole percent of people
Right.
to your organization.
Yep.
But what do you need? You probably need somebody who has like a variety of skills. You need somebody, if you're a software development company at that 100% company, you probably need somebody who understands like technical security, software development security, GRC, red team, and offensive security. And so
know how they all play together.
you look at that, and then are you going to hire 4 people to be in that position? And each of those 4 people are going to have 6-figure salaries, and that's a big
Or
investment.
if you skimp on it, you're not going to get the value out
Or
of it.
you're not.
Yeah.
And
Fully agree.
instead, and here's the other part. Do you actually, at that size, I find, and so not even a question, this is like what I'm seeing, is that these size companies do not need 20-80 hours times
Right.
4 of these people.
Right.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so for a fraction of that cost, you can get a team of people to do like our VGRC offering, our vProdsec offering, and put those kind of 2 things together, and all of a sudden you have the right skill sets you need to cover yourself from product security through pen testing through the GRC that handles it all, and that makes perfect sense.
I stand by it's an engineering problem. It's just who's doing the engineering.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with that. It's just like, I see a lot of people, especially, less mature companies.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't know
again,
the pathway.
And you don't have
into
the
that.
engineers to build it, to your point. And so what do? Oh, I need a Joe, I need a Justin, I need people and organizations to help get the support that I need. But at the heart of it, it ends up being a build versus buy concept. But
And
the regulatory burdens
almost
aren't going
always
down.
it's to buy is cheaper than to build. It's almost always.
If it's not your if this is not what your company does,
There's
focus
a
on
scale. There's a tipping point on the scale.
No. Like there's calculators. Like it's almost always. So
and the
because
differentiation,
people
I would say.
people don't include the maintenance thereof years after, and what it's going to take
hold
to
on.
maintain that. Okay,
Got it.
Yeah.
I agree from a system bit. We're talking like kind of app dev code. Like I'm talking about like full on capabilities, like
Okay.
hiring people,
so
like
FTEs
also, yeah.
versus that. Yeah, there is a
That's
tipping.
what- there's a
There is a
tipping
tipping. There absolutely is a
But
tipping
build versus
point.
buy
Yeah.
for like technological solutions. Fully agree.
Yeah.
Fully agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. But there is. I mean, eventually FTEs will be cheaper, but
Yeah.
it will be a transition, a big transition in that. And honestly, I still say that. I mean, most companies still outsource certain components.
Oh, elements of
into
it?
that.
Absolutely.
Because again, who would build a SOC?
Right.
Like why would I want to manage a SOC when all I need is alerts and troubleshoot and like somebody to monitor and do that?
and I see
At
this-
what scale? At what scale a company?
I see this with like in legal departments all the time. It's like, you have a couple internal lawyers and then you have external counsel. And there's reasons for it, but like to some extent, it's like, well, I don't need all these people all this time. I need a couple people to man the ship.
Right.
And then if something's going down and I need specialized expertise or like a body shop or
like a
whatever it
breach,
looks like.
like you hire
Exactly
the
right.
lawyers that are specialized in the breach. Like,
Exactly
that's not
right.
going to be your general counsel for the most part. You know, into that.
So before we wrap this part up, I wanted to go back to the core topic of this, which was think about the not only the change in compliance landscape, the convergence of all these things at once. And so, Justin, you and I were talking about this right before we got started, and it's to me, I don't care what kind of security program you're building and what your ultimate goal is. It doesn't matter to me whether you're trying to get a SOC 2 audit, you're trying to make sure you're HIPAA compliant, you're trying to get ISO certified. I'm looking at all these frameworks and having, dipping my, actually jumping in full on all of these frameworks, including CMMC. You kind of get all the meshing of this stuff. And I look at it and I go, oh, well, I really like what HIPAA says about the rule for that. So I think every ISMS we build, every security program we build should have a proper risk analysis process, which is HIPAA's way of saying a risk assessment. And I like how ISO says you should have interested parties. And if you're a NIST CSF shop, that's kind of your stakeholders. And so where's your interested parties list? And then the other part I like that a lot of people don't do, it's, well, what's your statement of applicability?
Yeah.
Well, what is that? That's your control list. Okay, so you mean like the CIS controls I want to pick? Yes, absolutely. In fact, if you like the CIS controls better, then use those over the ISO controls. And so now what are you doing? You're saying, well, let's look at a proper framework for a security program that we're pulling some of the best pieces from each of the major things that people are getting certified or audited on, and we're pulling those together.
And just wrap it around. It's like a wrapper around it's like a best of breed approach.
It is.
But for controls.
And then what happens is you're going into, oh, hey, I got a customer that says what we need to get ISO certified. Oh, well, let's figure out what we're missing. Let's do that gap assessment. Very rarely do I walk in an organization that doesn't need to be ISO. They have a statement of applicability. Well, where's your control list? Well, what do you mean a control list? I don't have it. Well, it's the CIS. Well, you adopted the whole thing exactly as written, or you modified it? What's your control list?
Actually, I had a call today, and they're like, we're getting killed by our baselines because we adopted every single CIS.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm
supposed to do that.
Why? And they're like, we don't know why.
Yeah, and
it was a little cultural thing, but it was funny. It was like, you don't need to do that. Like,
and I liked your response to me earlier before we were recording, where I said, well, list your interested parties. Like, why would that be important? Well, probably because we want to know who's making us do these security things.
What's the why?
Yeah, what's the why? It's because of these. And oh, by the way, we have listed in there this law. Well, let's run this by the attorneys. Do we actually follow that? No. Well, let's get that out of there so we're not creating
not liable for
stuff we don't need to do.
Yep.
So anyway, so I like the convergent part, taking us to that, getting the it's almost like that one comic that says, we have 15 frameworks. I'm going to make one more 16th one that pulls them all together.
That's what we need.
Well, now we have 16 frameworks.
Yep.
But, it's the superset of
Was that
all
Dilbert?
it was
Or an XKCD.
that's what it was.
exactly.
It was an XKCD. Yeah. So anyway, that's my thought process on it. Is let's get some of the best practices from the various frameworks, put them in place, and then you're on your way to be ready.
Well, we've all said this forever. Like, they all kind of sort of say the same things. Like, the best practices are the best practices. But to your point, they're selfish for their specific thing. So, like, I like the concept. Pull the best ones from the best places. Make sure you're doing them in all the right places, and then you're going to be good. But I also think at scale, it absolutely becomes an engineering problem where you go, okay, what do we automate? How do we get out of the world of asking engineers for screenshots every quarter or every time we get audited by someone external? How do we do this on a recurring basis or on a continuous basis? And then really the only meetings we should have to have with the control experts are, hey, is this still designed the same way? And all the evidence just kind of flows.
Yep. Yeah, that was one of the things. I'll do a little selfless plug too. But I think Joe's seen it. I don't know if I showed you the SCF thing that I did with the security controls framework. I did a module where I digested the entire...
This is inside of Pisky, right?
Inside of Pisky, yeah. That basically, out of the over 300 authoritative sources you can do, you can go through and pick which ones you want, and it will build SCF based on those requirements.
Oh, auto map.
And it maps everything into what you selected. So if you pick 2, you'll pick 2 and you'll see what those are mapped to and how they overlap, or, standalone, or you can pick 200, if you really wanted to.
Well,
and it will all do that.
And so it's like a hub and spoke model. SCF is the hub.
Yeah,
and you can map
exactly.
out to anything. And so then I assume it'll tell you, okay, these are your sources and here's your controls, and I do all the magic mapping.
Well,
That's
it's
part of a
SCF
PISCI.
controls. I take all the SCF controls, type of thing. Yeah.
But I, as a client, might not use all the SCF controls.
That might be. But this allows you to say, I want SOC 2.
That's what I'm saying. So then you
HIPAA,
can click a button and be like,
this.
here's your report for the controls you're doing, but it's hub and spoke from SCF. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what I mean when I say it's an engineering problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we don't have it today, but I hope in the future to be like, if you already built that program, to be like, well, now I want to add, and you say that, and then you just basically add it, and it will add whatever SCF controls that are.
You just
gapped
avoided
into
saying CIRCIA again, didn't you?
CIRCIA? No.
No, you said you want to add something.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're saying you already so right now you can go to Security Controls Framework, get the spreadsheet, and follow their. It's a little tedious process.
It's
in
a
order
spreadsheet. Yeah,
to do that.
And they have all the authoritative controls.
You've pulled that into a PISCI now, and instead of going and saying, "Oh, I want this one. Let's put an X in all these. Now let's
and
say
delete
that,
the rows that don't apply.
and then now let's go get the next one."
It's basically a 3-step workflow.
You say, I want to comply with this, this, and this.
Yeah, it's a big search, and you just start typing, and then select it. You search again to filter it out, because it is like 300 plus. But basically, you get kind of what you want, and you can scroll down if you really want, into it.
Yeah.
But it basically has the title, description, all that stuff, and then you just
So the
select it.
value of
fantastic.
that's really powerful because do you have a fixed price for? Is it public? Like on the
500.
website? 500 a month.
Yeah.
And
Cheaper if you do annual.
and if you're doing that, and if you were to say, hey, consultant, go and take SCF and put this stuff together, get me that, QA it, make sure it's good. You're going to spend more than $500 of consulting dollars that
probably.
month just to
I
get
did
that
this
part
for
done.
companies, and it took me a couple of hours. Like they had a new GRC system. They wanted to build it on a blended of a whole bunch of things. I would download the SCF. I would eliminate all the controls out of the spreadsheet, and then figure out a good CSV way of uploading it into their GRC tool. That was the way. And I'm like, man, there has to be a better way.
Well, and getting back to options analysis earlier, like I wouldn't want to trust AI to do it blind.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to pay the consultants to have to do it themselves, like manually do it.
Yep.
So it's like, the system solution feels like the right one.
Yeah. So it's nice, really flexible. I had to teach my app to basically digest, because they come out once a quarter with it, and we'll keep it updated, as they release it and everything. But I had to teach it to basically digest it, put it into a database structure. So we digest all their data into their spreadsheet into the database structure.
And it's a lot. It's a big spreadsheet.
So
it is a big.
You could just if you just have a PISCI only for the purpose of not having to pay a consultant to keep
Map
your
controls.
control list up to date, it would
pay
be
for
worth
it
it.
for 1 month, get what you need out of it, and then
it would be
cancel
worth it. No, just keep it, because it's going to
I
change.
guess we do have a free
and-
trial that
and-
doesn't need a card. So.
Well, not even that. Stop under. Hey, I'm trying to sell your product here. When stuff changes, you're going to keep it up to date. That's going to automatically happen in the background. And you said it's a future ad, so that now you've
future ad that you'll
two or
be able to
three?
modify whatever you created. So you can create whatever you want today, and it will establish it. The future will be, I want to add something on top of what I already created.
Yeah, will you be able to do like a what if and without?
Yeah, so basically I'll go through. So I have all the mappings and the core controls kind of in another database, a backend type of thing. And then when we go through and create it, I say, what do you want? And I'll create it. All it will take is actually it, saying, what do you need to add? And then I'll have to map the mappings to what they already have, and then add whatever that's not.
And then that shows up in a PISCI as, hey, here's the controls you haven't satisfied yet. Now let's go work on those.
Yep, it'll be untracked now. We're working on
awesome. That's
a
great.
big feature of actually improving our programs. It'll basically any new control is an untracked thing, and then you can add either regular tasks to test it, or in the future will be automation, into that. We're putting a lot.
All right, you heard it here. Go buy a Pisky. You need it because it will simplify a ton of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, 140. Can we finish?
Yeah, I think we need to get this last topic.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So for the last topic we have cybersecurity mergers acquisitions. There has been a pattern of a lot of acquisitions, and this comes on the heel that Google just bought Wiz for $32 billion. billion.
Right. That's a lot of money.
But the bigger thing, I mean, obviously that's a huge deal, into that. But if you actually look at a lot of the M&A deals, 10% of the entire cybersecurity industry changed hands in 2025. That goes from a lot of the merger acquisitions. So things are consolidating to bigger players, into this. And the question is that a good thing? A bad thing, indifferent, into that? What do you guys think, into this? Is it good from a consolidation point?
I think it's good.
Okay.
Why?
My selfish take on this is operationally rooted in the fact that actual security practitioners have just way too much going on. And
so you rather go to one vendor instead of 12?
A common UI, format, framework, vendor agreement, all that stuff is just less noise, less to train new people on, less.
Yeah.
Fewer contracts to manage.
So don't get me wrong. There are things on the cons side of that equation, but on the margin, on the net, I think it's a good thing. Best of breed historically, if you look at ERPs, if you look at security tools, if you look at anything, it becomes a nightmare to manage. So I just think from a pure operational play perspective, it's good as long as it doesn't squeeze out the innovation side of the equation.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. But I'm going to stay on the good side here before I talk about the cons I was thinking about. But I like that because you get tighter integrations with the various tools that you want to use if they're all inside the same platform.
Maybe. And I'll put that a little caveat there.
Well, you got an example?
So there are certain tools like OneTrust was notorious for just slapping the sticker on the side of the thing. What was that? Tugboat and there was another GRC. They basically ran them in parallel for years, even though they bought them.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the integration. If they're buying core tech that's good and they're going to integrate it into their core product, great. If they're just buying another silo and stick the sticker on the side and it's not managed well.
100%.
Or if they're buying it to kill it. That stuff, I mean,
that's
those
what
are
it
some
is.
Those are some of the cons I had.
Yeah.
And so I guess I should say the pros, and probably you would agree that the pros we're talking about are when this stuff goes right, what's going to be better. And what's going to be better is, you're going to get one platform with broader capabilities. The integrations will be tighter. You potentially could get some cost savings if you're going to be able to eliminate some of their tools. But some of that feeds into my cons as well, because we've seen this, is once you consolidate, you get pricing pressures. The vendors may raise the price because the competition is shrinking.
Right.
And so you kind of lose some of that. I'm thinking what happens when a bigger vendor buys that boutique shop for a software as a service, and how long is that founder going to stay on who kind of driving the innovation?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to start to have maybe talent drain.
1 to 3 years.
Yeah.
If that.
And talent drain, and the founders and key engineers, they might leave after, some point afterwards. Yeah. And then is the company going to keep innovating? And so
oftentimes you'll see big culture shifts, into that. In fact, I really liked, I was working with a company, I forget what the company was, but it was, what do they call it? Startup Studio or something like that. Cisco was trying this out where they would basically have a board that was made up of Cisco employees, senior people, in Cisco, and they would task another, like a company they owned to do a task, but they ran it as a startup. And they basically said, you can do whatever you want. You know, you can use our stack if you want to use Teams.
Oh, I
Or
see.
you can go out and buy Slack. We don't really care. You know, here's money. You
Like
know?
focused skunkworks.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
basically would build products
yeah.
out of that. And I think that's actually how the was it Meraki kind of came about, you know,
Yeah.
was through kind of that development, you know,
Right.
into it, where they would have basically a lean startup team, hungry. They developed their kind of own culture. They didn't get the culture of a bigger company coming in and kind of polluting it, you know, into that. You know, but they left it there and said, you know, we're still going to hold you accountable. You know, we got deadlines, we got stuff. The cash isn't infinite, but you know, it's your company and you have interests and profit, you know, sharing and all that stuff, you know, into it. And I thought that was really innovative, you know, to basically kind of help control the culture into that, because as we all know, and we've seen it, how many times of acquisitions the culture just gets murdered in these. You get these companies that they're building something exciting, they're excited about it, they sell, everybody's excited. 9 months later, the layoffs kind of come on the consolidation, and now they're like, well, this stinks, you know. We used to have, you know, 4 weeks of vacation, now it's 2, and now with this and that, and it's just...
Well, it's like the golden rule of acquisitions, like don't break the thing that makes the acquiree special.
Right.
Yeah.
And just sometimes when you try to apply standard corporate like logic or patterns to that, you break what made them special. Like it just happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, and one of the things I see when I'm watching some of the even from my ends and seeing some of the faculty, the consistent responses when they talk about various mergers happening, and it's a lot of that becomes, well, if you're in a contract right now, depending on who's being bought by who, let's take a look at it and see what do you do for the next 9 months? What do you do at renewal time? What should you watch for?
Well, even now, do you have a change of control clause in your contract?
Yeah. And if you were evaluating that company, then you know what should you be worried about if you're going to evaluate them to be a product you're going to buy? Do you buy them now or do you hold off? What's the you know, what have you seen as traditionally happen with some of these very large companies when they integrate stuff? How much innovation has dropped? So is it a wait 9 months and see where they're at? Are you going to see product roadmaps come out that show how it's how you're integrating properly, or are you not getting that kind of information?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that makes this a very interesting industry is a lot of security people are passionate about security.
Yeah.
And because of that, they want to have a best of breed model. Like I see fairly frequently security programs that gold plate certain elements of the program because it's what an individual is passionate about, and other parts of the program are left to languish. And I actually think one of the things I like about sort of the platformization or consolidation to some extent is if you're forced to pick a couple, I'll call them like mega vendors or a mega vendor or whatever, and you're like mostly into that ecosystem, it's not that much different than like Apple for humans operationally or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of operational benefits, and sometimes it's interactivity and other things, but
data sharing, whatever it is.
The other thing is like if Apple's not the best at a specific thing, like, and I don't know this for a fact, so just don't beat me up too much, but like pretend they're like cell coverage. Like I guess it's really more Verizon or whatever. But like if there's something they're not the best at, right?
Yeah.
But they're good enough, you still hang out with the ecosystem. Right? Like you're still in. And so
I mean, that's very common with the cell phones. Like look at all the Pixel, you know, Google Pixel phones. I mean, they're coming out with bigger, you know, better megapixel for the cameras and everything. Apple was never one to try to compete in that. They always got better, but they were never like the best, you know, into that. And even like when Jobs was there, he's like, well, we're not always the first to it, but they tried to be the best at it, you know, type of thing, you know. So and
I think there's a danger with like like hyper passionate security people that are really deeply focused in an area. They're like, oh, I'm so mad my company got purchased. And again, you have
Until
to.
they get a little profit sharing, then they're not.
Well, right. Well, not my company, but like this company, my vendor. I'm mad that my vendor got purchased, right?
Yeah,
because they're the best at this thing. It's going to kill the product or whatever. And as long as they don't kill the product or don't butcher the integration, as long as it remains good enough, like you can be annoyed as a security nerd hat on, but as like a person that's meant to be driving organizational risk, it's kind of like, well, is it no longer good enough? If it's no longer good enough, you have a problem. You have to make a change. If it's still good enough, it's probably just easier because it might be part of this ecosystem you're already bought into, or you might be driven to buy into an ecosystem you don't like. That's a different problem.
Right.
But
well, that's and that reminds me of another conversation. But if you're looking at this from a holistic program, and all of a sudden this tool that you're using over here pops into it, and now you don't need to pay
that actually happened at a client of mine recently, and I'm like, I'm not upset about this at all.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Like-
unless they, like you were saying, unless they ruin or don't bring a feature in.
Yeah.
But just think, before you probably had to send somebody to training for that tool.
That's exactly
and send
right.
somebody to training for this tool, and now it's all integrated. Can you get one person who's an expert on it to be able to see everything across the
and before
the platform?
I could only have just pretend like two resources, and one is this like platform baked resource, and the other one is this I always refer to as like the island of misfit toys resource, right? Like all the other like one-off things. Well, if one-offs start to move into the platform thing that you're part of, well, now I have two resources, and guess what? One can take a vacation, right? Because they're part of the same ecosystem. Like they have to be perfect. No, but that's the same support contracts. It's like, it just makes it so much more manageable.
Yeah.
And there are cons,
Yeah.
but the pros I think outweigh.
So really, I think if I'm hearing the message correct and summarize it, it's consolidation is great if they consolidate it right.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Right.
And I would agree with that. Like I think everybody likes to deal with less vendor, relationships at the end of the day, with that. But as long as they do it right.
I mean, it's like, I know you're like part of the Apple ecosystem and you use Notion, both great things. Well, if Apple bought Notion and they integrated it well, you probably wouldn't be terribly upset.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I would be like, I wonder what's going to happen now, type of thing. But yeah, it's, as long as they do it well.
Well, and the other part though, what happens when they screw it up is somebody's going to come along and fix that problem, and it's going to get somebody else to create a new startup. Like, hey,
well, and who's that somebody? You mentioned before, like, oh, the founders are going to bounce. What are they going to go do in a year after their non-compete's up?
yeah.
So I actually, it was funny. I won't mention it directly, but I know somebody specifically that they got their company bought out, well bought out into it.
Yeah.
They had a 3-year non-compete in the industry, which is typical, for a founder. And he came back and they're like, they're still not doing it right. Let me take what I got from the company and start the company right back up after a 3-year break and everything.
Right.
And now he's at what he sold the company for, like 3 or 4 times the size of the company was.
Yeah.
Because he had now
Learn better, do better, have contacts, all the
He had
things.
all the knowledge, all the stuff to like build this thing, and he had the funding.
think I know who you're talking about, but
absolutely,
I actually know 3 examples that just fit what you're saying. It's kind of
And it was funny, and it's so funny because like he got bought out for the company that and they inquired and did a number of things, but he's like, I'm going to do it again, and it's just he did this, well, not the same playbook, but he
No, but it's like,
basically
here's what I
started
learned,
up,
and here's what I would have done different. So now I'm going to do it different.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. I will say there is one, I think, really nasty risk in certain scenarios when someone gets bought. If you're kind of a smaller to mid-market company and you're used to dealing with another smaller mid-market company and you're basically in each other's ballpark with respect to sort of size of client or whatever, or you're a big fish in their pond potentially. If the system you like gets bought by a really big player, your support contract is now a rounding error. Like, you just might not get the same attention.
Yeah.
And I do think for mid-market and smaller companies, that kind of consolidation can be really painful if you're now getting a lower tier quality of support or personal service than you were accustomed to. And that can be a
you might have
big
just
deal.
you might have just Slack messaged Bill, the engineer, over at the company that you were getting the product from, and they were giving you quick
Exactly
fixes
right.
and
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a
that's
script
gone.
to go run it in your environment,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah. So I do think that's a real and legitimate problem that impacts a bunch of clients when this, or customers when this happens. But I think on the net, it's probably better.
Yeah. Any
Anyway.
other thoughts?
no more thoughts.
No more thoughts. All right, gentlemen, wrap up here.
Let's do it.
Good wrap up. So we're about
Oh.
good time. No wrap.
We want as part of our wrap up. We want your
yeah.
questions.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So as I was eating dinner before I got here, I got a question from a colleague of mine who's in compliance, and the question was, it was a great question. So I'm thinking through the answer here, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't we ask our listeners to send us some of your compliance questions. Send us some of your cybersecurity compliance questions, the things that we're talking about, and we'll randomly pick a couple and talk about them on the air.
Yeah.
Where should they send that to?
Ask.
Yours is better.
I think the shorter is better,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Ask at distilledsecuritypodcast.com.
Yeah.
Would
So
be
we
the
can put that
best.
in the show notes, right?
We will put it in the show notes, and we'll also, because we're not sure how many people actually last, all this long here.
Thank you if you do.
Yeah, we'll blast it out over LinkedIn and actually do some other messages with that. But yeah, if you do ask at distilledsecuritypodcast.com.
Yeah, Brad, we'd appreciate it.
like
Give us another piece of content to talk about on here, and we love solving those kind of problems.
Yep, and we'll drop your name, anonymous name, first name, only, and give you some credit, and we'll talk about it. So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you for
right.
joining us again for episode 22. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm with YouTube to do that. And join us next time. Thanks, all.